This is your Pan-African show called AfreeQa with your host Qetselawork Seifu. Today we have a rather bigger group. We have two people that we are having a conversation with. One we know, and then we have a new guest for you. This is Naud Baye. If you could please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself too.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. Well, my name is Sador. I'm one of the founders of ARM, or African Roots Movement, and I work with Naud.
Well, I'm hoping you all remember me. I am Naud Baye. Since we've last met, I have tried to diversify my horizon. I have tried to expand who I am. I am a content creator for Peperinya. I am the co-founder of African Roots Movement, and I do freelance modeling, so I'm a model now, apparently. And I'm a budding entrepreneur or business owner.
Sador,
Yes.
how did you meet Naud?
Okay, so we first met in high school. We both went to St. Joseph's School. Since then, we've been
together.
friends, yes. And through some situations, we apparently became partners. We talked about working on youth and on African history and problems, and that is how we ended up here.
Beautiful. So let's go straight into it. So how did you start getting involved in nonprofits? I guess this question applies to both of you.
The way we got into nonprofit it wasn't intentional. The intention wasn't like not making profit, but it was about doing the work which had impact. We were impact driven. We were trying to do things that could impact the lives of others, people who are around us, people who live in the same city as us, people who live in the same country as us. So it was about the impact initially. And then when we started to do the work, when we started like progressing more, we understood that that is the channel that we should head into, because the profit industry is a bit complicated for like having an impact. You can't be impact driven and a business at the same time. I mean, you can, but it's kind of difficult for someone who's starting out. So we analyzed the routes we took, and then we saw that an NGO was the way to go, because we could be impact driven and then we can gauge what kind of differences we are making. So that's how I got into impact NGO.
So I initially started in high school. I was president of the Peace and Justice Club. So I practiced community service in high school. We visited, charity organizations and such. So since high school, I have always been interested in community service and social movements. Then I went to St. Mary University. Then I tried to start a club, but it was not, because of COVID, it was not in a good time. After that, we reconnected. We talked about what we should do. So we wanted to make an impact, like you said. But in order to do that, we needed an organization. So the best way was to have a non-profit or an NGO, a local NGO. So then we agreed on creating one.
So now, can you tell us what African Roots Movement is and why you thought it was important to create it?
Okay. I believe it's a question best answered by him, since he was the instigator.
Okay, so ARM, or African Roots Movement, is a youth development organization. Our initial idea was to create resourceful and strong or robust youth to make African solutions for Africa. We are trying to create a future, a sustainable future where we can, create beautiful nations, organizations, a nation that is constructed from good past, may I say, youth that can solve a problem without creating chaos. That's the initial idea of ARM. So the reason we called it African Roots Movement is because it started here, the roots from Africans. So we wanted...
You mean Ethiopia?
Ethiopia,
okay.
Yes, but we have plans to expand. So that's the name.
I'd like to build off on that, if that's possible.
At least do. But wait,
Okay.
Can you also answer why it was important to start this movement? I'm going to call it a movement because it is a movement.
Yes, it is a movement.
Exactly.
So the main reason is that it was everything going with chaos happening. No one is focused on the use. The only reason the politicians or anyone is focused on use is to use them maybe as a militant or as labor or something to get money or debit from World Bank, and that is not right.
So you want to make a difference?
Yes, make an impact.
For me, joining ARM was about where I was personally in my life. Since I came on your show last time, the Pan-African in me had started growing exponentially. Like your show started exposing me to Pan-African cultures, and that's when the Pan-African side of me started to grow even more. And I was feeding it on purpose because it looked like a beautiful thing. Because it is a beautiful thing, and I wanted to make it richer. I wanted to make it grow. And when I was in that mindset, the things that I saw, they were not good. People were not thinking about Africa. People were quarreling about small like tribes, being small tribes when we can be big, when we can be Africa. So when I saw that, like part of me felt very wrong because, like I said, I wasn't a Pan-African before. I mean, I didn't have the idea of what a Pan-African is or what he should do. I'm not saying that I do now, but right now I'm on the verge of discovering myself through a Pan-African lens. So when I started seeing things that didn't make sense, that didn't really fit, I saw, like he said, like the youth were being used instead of the youth like driving the nation. The youth were being targeted as a pawn. And the youth is not a pawn. The youth are not pawns. We are not pawns. We are very strong. We are very powerful. And to see such resources being tamed and imprisoned, that doesn't make sense to me. So I was like, okay, I should join this movement. I should make an impact. I should show them who we are. So that's African Roots movement for me.
How many teams does the African Roots movement have? And do you also have partners?
For the team, we have 4 different frontiers we wish to resolve in order to create a better use. There's the education, job or career, philanthropy, and social club. Each department has its own team. Me, I control the education. Naod controls the youth club. So in collective, we have about 8 team members who are skilled in their departments and career. When it comes to the partnership, we have different companies working with us. One of them is She Jobs. She Jobs, as the name implies, creates opportunities for jobs. The other one is Texon. Texon helps us with website creation and all the IT department. Not only that, but we do have advisors who are, veterans in their career or work. One of them being Belletchacho, the other one Damaga.
Can we have their last name?
Belletchacho Tadasa. Damaga, apparently we do not know.
He used to be our teacher.
Yes.
Actually. When we were in high school, he used to be our teacher back then.
In St. Joseph?
Yes.
Wow, that's lovely.
Yes.
Okay.
And the other advisor is here.
Okay.
Yours truly.
Yours truly.
Yes, really. So we do hope to make an impact with all of our teams and partners.
Brilliant. Anything you want to add?
Yes, definitely. The partnerships that we have accumulated so far, like we have tried to be strategic in our approach in resolving the issues we want to resolve. So in our current phase, we are trying to gather resources and mobilize them when we need them. So one of the resources being the adults we have, or like he said, veterans that we have. So these partnerships or these advisors, it's about having a two-way communication between 2 different generations and bridging the gap so we can have the communication. That way, you can benefit from the energy we have, and we can benefit from the wisdom that you have, the wisdom you have gained over the years. So the partnerships are about making a long-lasting impact and making our impact more sustainable, because we all know we're going to die someday. So when we die, what we are trying to do should live on. So in order to make that happen, in order to make sure that does happen, we are trying to partner up with different people who can aid our movement, who can help us go further.
I want to add to that is we have other members outside Africa, Canada and America. Canada, Bisrat Brana, who helps us gather other resources, mobilize our youth power. Any other Africans who want to join this movement, Bisrat helps us mobilize those members.
That was a very good point that you made. He lives in Canada.
He lives in Canada.
So you guys need partners in all the other African countries.
Yes.
So now let's get into what activities ARM does. And I read one of them, which was Ray.
Yes.
Right? So if you could tell us about Ray and then the other activities.
Okay. African Root Movement is a social movement aimed at empowering and developing the youth. There's a reason why we chose the youth. The youth is currently defined as an age where you move from childhood dependence into adulthood independence. So it's a rather flexible term that could be used. So that is why we targeted the youth, because like every organization has a different definition for it. For example, the UN defines it as the age between 15 and 25. The African Youth Charter defines it as 15 up to 35. So that flexibility allows us to make an impact on a larger scale. So we can orient ourselves to whatever age group that fits our desires, the impact that we want to have. So that's why we chose youth groups. That's why we chose youth empowerment and youth development. So when we come to that, one of the ways to develop youth is through social activities, through having them engaged in social exchange. So that is when RAY comes in. RAY is an acronym for Revolutionary African Youth. And it also...
Your names are just amazing.
It also makes sense in the term of like the word being ray. Ray is a light, something that shines. And mathematically, ray is something that has an origin and knows where it's going, or it's oriented to a specific direction. So we took that to mean we are revolutionary African youth who know where we are coming from, who want to go to some specific destination. So that is what ray is. Ray is a social group where youth from different backgrounds, different expertise come together to help each other grow, to expand each other's horizons, to make each other better so that we can be useful for our country, for our nation, and then for our continent, and on an even larger scale for our globe, for our world. Because the youth is what we have. The energy of the youth can be transmitted to make different things. It could be and should be channeled to make many impactful things. So that is what Ray is.
It's a good thing that you are actually focusing on youth, because as we all know, the next huge population is the youth.
Yes.
And you also, you guys are also young, so it's easier to convince and also talk to young adults through you as opposed to through me.
Yes.
If you know what I mean.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah? So what have you as ARMS achieved so far?
It has been a year since we started, and within that year we have organized 2 blood donation events, 2 or 3 clothes drives, which have collected more than 200 clothes, and we have other youth meetings so we can exchange knowledge. We are also on the road of creating school club, the school club. So that is where we are right now.
I would like to expand.
I was just going to ask.
Ray is about youth. It's targeting youth. So, and like I initially said, like the term youth can be defined flexibly. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be flexible in our approach. So part of another project of ARM is Ray Community. And Ray Community is a community of young adults aged 21 and above. So that is where we have collected and brought together people of different backgrounds. Some are entrepreneurs, some are masters in their own field, some are graduated from their specific faculties. So in the Ray community, we have tried to bring together youth to identify the problems that they think they should be solved. So Ray community is a community of change makers. So we have endorsed the title change makers. So all of us there, or anyone who joins Ray community, is a change maker. So that's the only label we associate with ourselves. So what change you want to make is up to you. All we can endorse is that you are a change maker, I am a change maker, so let's make change. So that way everybody can look at something, look at what's going on, look at what's wrong in this world and what we are seeing, what's evident to them, and then we can start tackling them, we can start changing them. So Ray community is for 21 years and above, and we are also trying to work on establishing a school club called Ray Club. That way we can ensure our succession when we go. So eventually we are going to go, so that ensures our succession. And it also helps us introduce the younger generation into what we are trying to do. They can see what we are trying to do. We share experiences with them. At least that's what we have in mind. We haven't actually gotten the approval that we want. We are just in the process of making it. But Ray School Club is going to be targeting teenagers. So that way they can understand what we are trying to do. So if we bring them onto our cause, we can have their energy as well. We can have someone who's going to succeed us when we pass. So that way we are trying to form a partnership between a school and us, and we are going to see how the pilot program works, and then we plan to expand into higher educations like universities and other high schools as well.
Yes, Ray is a sustainable solution, I think, for youth communities, for platform, so they can show their talent, network with each other. The reason, like he said, we created a community and the high school club is to make sure it is sustainable. Okay. So once we are gone, there is someone else to take the place. Yes, yeah. That is a big problem in our country. When someone goes, it always trends. Yes, and leave. Yes, it's always chaos. Yeah. So
we need to start running relays. Because that's when you know exactly the time. I mean, everything has to be right for you to give the baton and that runner to run with the baton without dropping it.
So we are creating maybe a road.
Exactly. Mm.
It's amazing how Ethiopia doesn't participate in the relay run, does it?
I know, we don't. We don't.
Could be indicative of something bigger.
You never know now. You never know. You know, it's so interesting when you call out African Roots Movement or even Revolutionary African Youth versus when you say ARM or Ray. Huge difference. Right after you told me what Ray was, and then hearing that sentence flow, and then when you say Ray, it doesn't have that same feeling.
How so?
Do you understand what I mean? Because you're saying Ray as opposed to Revolutionary African Youth, which has like a big impact.
It does.
Yeah. The same as ARMS.
The name has strong message.
Weight behind it. Yeah.
There is. So we need to say the whole thing. What are African Roots Movement aims and goals going forward?
The main aim is to guide the youth. There is no one guiding the youth. We don't know our purpose or our goals, even our history. So anyone can use as weapon or as a pawn. We want a youth that knows where it's going. It doesn't matter if it's in Ethiopia or outside Ethiopia, because they still represent Ethiopia and Africa as a whole. Yes.
Well, to add a couple of points on that, like the reason we are aiming at improving the life of the youth is because the youth is the one who's going to take over. So from a problem analysis that we held a couple of months back with one of our club advisors, the overarching problem that we saw was that there is a youth identity crisis. The youth don't know who we are. Like, we don't know who we are. We don't know where we're going. We don't know where we want to go. So that is a huge issue. So if we empower the youth, if we help them understand where they can go, who they are, what abilities they have, they can make sure that the development of our country, our continent, and then our world is ensured. So that is why we aim at it. Okay.
Sorry, I wanted to ask, why are you guys so lost? Why is the youth lost? Why can't, I mean, we've all gone through that process, right?
Yeah.
So at some point, something has stopped
for
this generation. Because you don't know what you want, you don't know where you're going, like you said. So why do you think that is so? Because we have much larger population coming up, growing through the same way you did.
Yeah.
So what is it that needs to change for children to start thinking about their future?
So there are so many reasons, one of them being Western influence. The problem is that we are forgetting our culture and our history. We are more focused on what Hollywood tells us, what any singer is wearing. And the more we are attached to that, the more we detach from our roots. And the more we do that, we could forget our past, our history. And if there is no past or history, there's
no future.
Yes, that's the problem.
There is a book I'm currently reading. It's called The Philosophy of the Pan-African.
Okay.
It talks about, like he said, the Western influence and capitalism. So I believe the biggest disconnect comes from us not knowing, like us being attached to the material world too much. So like he said, when we're looking at the Western culture, we're looking at what the rappers are wearing. We're looking at what Hollywood is doing, what movies they say. So in a capitalist world, you're going to strive for like material things. But we are not just material beings. We are more than that. At least I believe so. I know so because I know I'm not just a material. I'm beyond that. So I believe everyone has that capacity within them, but the disconnect comes when everyone is trying to attach themselves, their values to material things. So I believe that's where the disconnect is. I believe that's where we lost our way. When we started to attach our values to material things, we're just material things. We're becoming imprisoned by materialistic view. So I believe that is the issue at hand. And then, of course, I mean, it's easy to point the finger, but nobody is trying to counteract this. Everyone is like falling prey to the Western influence. So since nobody is trying to counteract it, since everyone is going along with it, everyone is going to keep going along with it.
Right.
There's no one to say, stop, this should not happen. We are beyond this. No one is saying that. So if we're like being sheeps being driven, like going into slaughterhouses. That's what's happening, I believe. So there's a disconnect between our true selves while we are attaching our values to the material world. I believe that's what the problem is.
So how do you think we can get out of it though? I mean, because it's going to get worse, is what I'm trying to say, you know, because now the social media has come, so it's worse than just watching a movie. It's way beyond that now. So at this point, how do you think the youth could be helped?
Well,
because you could still do the education part through the social media. It's how we use it.
Well, we can do two things. We can play their game, or we can create our own.
Thank you.
And what we are doing is trying to create our own. The movement is about Africa. It's not about just Ethiopia or Kenya. It's just as a whole. It's about Africa. It's about being connected to our ancestors and being holistic people, religious, our beliefs, and reconnecting that. And I think as a youth, we can make a change, we can make an impact, we can create a new game where we can win.
As Africa now, I think we have awoken.
I believe so.
Especially in the West, we're seeing a lot of change, and that change is coming from the youth because they are demanding, they need change. So when you see all of that, you know that, you know, there are certain parts of the African countries that are actually moving.
Yes.
Can you tell us the future of African Roots movement?
Okay, so we plan to expand. Right now, African Roots movement is working on Pan-Ethiopia. We are trying to create an Ethiopian youth that is pan-Ethiopian, not just, you know, it's not about politics or any other thing, but ourselves. We need to believe in ourselves, and we have to like it.
Ourselves.
Yes. And then we go Pan-Africa, then Pan-Human. Because we are living in a world, in one world.
So that's your approach?
Yes.
Okay. And your upcoming projects?
We are planning to organize like the biggest blood drive and clothes drive that we have organized so far in our scale. And from what we have done so far, we are trying to make it very big, as big as we can. So that way we can impact lots of people, and we can make a lot more noise as well. Because
when you say big impact?
The impact is, well, in terms of the blood drive, it's about reaching people who need the blood. Well, the blood is usually for mothers during pregnancy or during childbirth. So we want to make sure that the youth is actually giving back to the mothers that are going to replace them, the mothers that are bringing out youth that are going to replace them. So the clothes drive is about looking to your peers, looking amongst ourselves, and then looking at the people who are less fortunate than us. So philanthropy is a huge pillar that we want to attack. It's one of the pillars that we have as an organization, because philanthropy teaches you that you can give, you should give. So when you give, when you're in a mindset of giving, like you see what you have. You are starting from abundance, from what you have. So you can always give. That way you can think of the next person, the other person. Well, when you're thinking about the other person, you have everything that you need. So that's why we are trying to like organize our events on a larger scale. Another upcoming project that we had, I kind of mentioned it in the previous question, is the Ray Club. We are trying to start a pilot project with the Ray Club in one...
What was Ray again?
Ray is Revolutionary African Youth Club. Okay, I should enunciate that more. Revolutionary African Youth Club is what we're trying to start in a high school, and then that's going to be our pilot project. And once we understand things about that project, we plan to scale it further. We also have mentoring projects where we have the community members, the Revolutionary African Youth community members, engaging in mentoring relationships, where the mentoring relationship is about creating better leaders who understand how to be led, and leaders who understand how to lead. So we also have mentoring project upcoming, and we are currently working on registering our initiative as a CSO with the Civil Service Authority here in Addis Ababa, making us a homegrown or Hager Bekkal NGO. So we have big steps in mind, and we are going to need all the resources that we can get. And that's what we have upcoming right now.
Yes. Like you said, philanthropy is a big pillar because it teaches you giving back. And that is a big problem now, because all of the greed and manipulation, what we want to teach the youth is giving back, caring about each other.
I guess the youth has become very selfish now.
We have.
Which is very unlike Ethiopians. And I guess it's also because of all those Western influences that have slowly entered ourselves. So now we have become that.
Yes, we are almost 90% materialistic.
Yeah.
We care about our phones more than our souls.
Ooh, that's pretty deep. Our phones more than our souls. Can you describe the relations of African roots movements with Ethiopia, Africa, and the world?
Okay. This has to do with the approach that we are trying to have. Our first approach is creating a pan-Ethiopian Ethiopia. So it's not about the small tribes that are imprisoning our heads. We are much bigger than that. We are Ethiopians. So it's about developing a pan-Ethiopian identity across our country. And once we achieve that, it is going to be easier to make sure of the development of our country. So if our country is developed, we can be the ones giving aid to the others. So once you start saving yourself, once you put on your mask, like on planes they say to put your mask on first before helping others. So African Roots Movement plans to create a pan-Ethiopian identity first, and then once we create that pan-Ethiopian identity, we can come up with youth that can sustain what we have, that can look for others, that can look to help others. And then after that pan-Ethiopian identity, once we have achieved that, we plan to attack, or we plan to build a more Pan-African view of a more Pan-African identity. So that way we want others to see what we have done here in building a Pan-Ethiopian culture. So once we achieve that, it could be easier like for others to see what we have done. So there is going to be a Pan-Mali identity in Mali. There's going to be a Pan-Kenyan in Kenya. So once we have achieved that, once people see what we can do here, they're going to realize what they can do there. So once all that is achieved, we can go out and then try to achieve a Pan-African identity. So a Pan-African identity doesn't necessarily mean you have to be in Africa, or doesn't necessarily mean you have to be African. It just means that you understand the value of Pan-Africanism. So anyone who has a Pan-African identity, we welcome them. We want to work with them. We want them to help us achieve our dreams, because that is what Pan-Africanism is about. And then once we achieve Pan-African ideology, we want to achieve a pan-human identity. I was looking at your show a couple of months back. It was one of your guests that said the sixth dimension Africa is about the diaspora Africa. So Africa is the northern, the southern, the eastern, the central, and then the western. So the sixth one is the diaspora. The diaspora is spread throughout the world. Throughout the world, we have Africans who have African roots. So it's about capitalizing on that and then bringing together those Africans to understand our human values, our pan-human values, so we can look out for the next person instead of just looking out for ourselves.
First, we have to tackle Pan-Ethiopia, because we have to accept ourselves. Once we have accepted, we can actually help others to accept themselves. Then there's the Pan-Africa level. I'm sure we will have other chapters in around Africa, Kenya, African Root Movement, Kenya, Sudan, South Africa, Central, and everywhere.
Definitely. Yes. It has to go around,
yes.
Right?
Then we expand as a whole, as a world. We need to have a sustainable economy, future, because the world is dying, and we have to be pan-human.
So we have actually come to the end of our conversation. This last question is not really a question, since both of you are young. I would like you to give the young population your messages that you think the population now needs to hear. I can't say advice, since you're all in the same field.
Yeah. Most of Ethiopians know how to die for their country. That's our patriotism.
Right.
But what we want to say is, as you can die, you can also live for your country. You can also learn for your country. You can also respect yourself and your community.
The globe is ours. The country is ours. Most of the population, like if we had to support it with stats, 25% of the world is under the age of 15, and maybe 10% of it is above the age of 65. And when we come to Africa, 40% of the population is under the age of 15, and less than 4% is above the age of 65. What does that tell you? It tells us that we have the globe in our hands. Everything is ours. We have it in our hands. We just have to realize the capacity that we have, what we can do, who we are, and what we want to do. So once we achieve that, everything is in our hands. So I would say, let's achieve what we can. Let's come and realize our full potentials.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate it. While you were talking, and when you say African movement, and then Ray was? Revolutionary African youth. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in and watching this Pan-African show called AfreeQa. I'm your host, Qetselawork Seifu, and I thank both of my guests for coming out here and having this conversation with me.
Thank you
again.
for having us.